we go. Hello, everybody. Hello. All good? Yeah. How are you guys doing? Hope you're having a great Sunday so far. Hey, Sable. Hey, Rose. Hey, Slothy. Hello. Great to see you all here. Hopefully Rose this time a bit more rested than last week. What have you guys been doing today? I was actually mostly asleep today. I woke up like an hour before the stream here now, so hi. We're probably going to be doing a bit of a longer stream today with some gaming afterwards. As always, we do one chapter and then we'll do whatever. Probably no karaoke today though. I know. I feel so bad, Rose. You actually missed every single song because you fell asleep. I'm so sorry. Maybe one day you'll hear. Maybe one day you'll hear me sing. Who knows? God, it is so freaking warm here, man. It's incredible. I hate it. I don't like it being this hot. Somebody help. I'm dying over here. There she is. Look at that, Rose. Hi, Crystal. I just woke up. Give me a break. Hey, I woke up an hour ago, Crystal. EP Bean. So EP, I feel you. I was finally able to get some more sleep than 4 hours the past couple days, so. Aww. I would love some cuddles. Absolutely. We're gonna have a cuddle party here, huh? Cuddle party, cuddle puddle, let's go. You guys are so cute. Let's see. So it's like 11 p.m. over here right now, right? And it's still 73 Fahrenheit. Max today was 93. Ah. What do you mean, nah, Crystal? What the hell? What do you mean, nah, huh? Explain yourself, girl. I did say hi. What the hell are you talking about? I said hi, Crystal. What the hell? Oh my god. It's not even paying attention. Oh my god. Can you believe that, Rose? See? Even Rose is on my side here, Crystal. Well, the drama I walked into. Yeah, I was about to not get cuddles. Could you believe that, Slothy? Could you believe that? No cuddles from Crystal? Unbelievable. But little does she know, even her bestie is on my side, huh? Hi, Slothy. I hear she gives good cuddles too. I can believe it. I would love to. I wouldn't know because she hasn't come see me. Oh my god. What a bestie, huh? Hey, it's only 6 hours. It's a day's trip, you know? You can make that. Now, on the other hand, if I would want to come over there, that's like 12 hours, 13 hours at least. And way more money. I have a better excuse, Crystal. Come on. It's just 6 hours. Exactly. No excuses, only actions. All right. If I have the money, I'll fly over. Don't you guys worry. I will come visit. And cuddle all of you. How about that, huh? Oop. Meet up halfway in the ocean. We'll find like a little island somewhere and on a floating garbage heap. That would be perfect. Private island, let's go. You know, on a floating garbage heap though, that'd be on brand because I'm garbage. No. Just like me for real. Give me macroplastics, baby. Let's go. Look, gotta love munching on some plastics. The food's almost done. Enjoy your food, Slothy. Take it easy. So, who of y'all can swim if we have to get on that island? I'm gonna read a book. I know, Crystal never wants to pay attention to me and my books. It's okay. I get it. This is okay. No. Don't worry, Slothy. I can help you put it back in. you can still twerk if you dislocate your hip. It just hurts lots more. Then you probably shouldn't do that. Well, now I gotta see that. Crystal twerking? Come on. Enjoy your food, Slothy. Damn, I'm just gonna be left out here all by myself, huh? I mean, I'm sure Rose is a snack just like you, Crystal, but come on. I'm all by myself. Sad for the book? Of course, I always am. It's such a good book. This chapter was a bit on the slower one because it was a backstory chapter, but I'm so excited to see where it's going. We're getting close as well. Like, look at that. Like, this all is what we have left. Let's see how many chapters how many pages we have today. Ooh, today's a bigger chapter, huh? Yo, what? Yo, we got a 50-page chapter today, guys. God damn. My game later, I don't know. I really want to be. What about my motivation? Be like, hey, you're fine. You're fine, Crystal. You do what you have to do. I know you barely pay attention to me in the book anyway. No. It's okay. It's okay. You're good. You also just woke up. You gotta do some other things. I just woke up an hour ago. I'm gonna be here for a good while. Like I said, considering this is a bigger chapter, we'll see how long that takes. And then we'll see. Probably do Genshin, probably do Honkai. Ooh. Probably Honkai first, and then Genshin for the new event and everything, because I haven't done that yet. But yeah, we'll have plenty of time after the book. I'm gonna be here for a good while. Just listen to the amazing voice. I don't have that good voice. I want to like Genshin again. It's okay, Crystal. Like I said before, I've had a big break as well throughout the entirety of Sumeru, so sometimes it's what you need. I'm not playing it as active as I used to as well, so. My brain no cooperating. Aww. Maybe you just need a little bit of a longer break and then eventually come back. Speaking of cooperating, if you ever want to play Genshin together as well, Crystal, I do have an NA account. we could play together on. If that's an incentive to come back, you know. You can play games, you can play Genshin with me. Oh, Rose, that is so cute. But you're also amazing. What do you mean? If you're Crystal's bestie, you have to be amazing too. You're not lame. Shut up. And pick someone lame as my soulmate bestie, so there. Exactly. If Crystal deems you her bestie, you have to be an amazing person. Come on. That's just how it works. I don't make the rules. Platonic wife, damn. Let's go. I love that. Rose is me, but with slightly different issues. So still just as big as a cutie as you. Okay. Okay. She really is. I believe it. Me not cutie, then prove me wrong. Crystal cutie, you're both cuties. You haven't proven anything yet. I know Crystal is, 100%. And I believe, Crystal, that you are too, unless you prove me wrong. Because you can't. Exactly. I will find a way. Okay. You can try. You can certainly try. If it works or not is a different question. Now, why does the box feel so empty though, huh? We gotta do it like that? What? Stating facts? Telling the truth? Those are Crystal's words, not mine, but I mean... Crystal's putting words in my mouth right now. No, man, actually, I mean, you can. And I wouldn't say no. Okay, I quit now. Nah, you don't have to. It's okay. You know about some of the shit that I say, so this is nothing. Oh, so you sit on your hands, but if I ask, it's a no, huh? Damn, Rose. No, I offered her multiple times as well already, but she always says no. Yeah, that's exactly the position I'm waiting in for her to sit. I don't even try. Crystal, you know by now. Can make something out of almost anything. He's too good. I know my way around with words. What can I say? I know how to use that mouth. Welcome back, Sable. Don't worry about it. I am. They're not. Right. I see some of those chat messages from earlier still here. Yeah. You're not innocent here, Crystal. I'm an angel baby. Rose is just a cutie here. God, it's way too hot in my room. Victoria's Secret Angel, okay. None of you can be saved, you guys are wild. Now, Rose, I would need some proof for that.
I will send you to Jesus.
You can't just make a claim like that without backing it up. I'm nowhere near as sexy as those models are. Like, damn, I wish. I'm sure you still are, though. I will cuddle the living shit out of you. I'm down for that. Absolutely. I'm always down for a good cuddle session. What happens during it, we'll see. Y'all need some privacy because I can leave for a bit. Nah, you're fine, Sable. You can join. Thanks. Your loss. Because both Crystal and Rose are some lovely ladies here. Y'all too much even for me. Damn. Maybe you need to step it up. It's never too late. Thanks. I'm sure they are. True though. Again, those claims need some backing. Hey, yo, Crystal? I didn't. Wow. I'm the least sus on here. Here, maybe, yeah, but I don't know what you inside doing DMs. I mean, do I want to know? Yo, Lifton, what's up? Yeah, we're doing well, we're doing well. We just woke up like an hour ago. We're starting with the book here soon. Just chatting a little bit beforehand. Just hanging out. How you been, man? What you big on? Hey, I appreciate it, man. Hope you're having a good day. We do nothing in DMs. You're a good bean. Right. I totally believe you, Sable. I'm pretty sure I snapped you while I was in it. Whoa! Damn, okay, Rose. I see how it is. Huh. Damn. You know, I have Snapchat too. Just saying. Best friend. I'm sure those are some great benefits, huh? Oh, God. No! I closed the music! Shit. Hydrate, I got you, Sable. I closed down the music! I'm the worst one? Okay, okay.
Du weißt auch nicht, ob du lieber
Sure. You could use a drink too. I got some water here. Water's downstairs, then I guess you gotta go down, huh? Sounds kinky, I like it. Damn. I see. Alright, Rose. I see what you're into. Okay. This chat's scary right now. It's not that scary. What do you mean? I have a snack and water. Good. Let's go. Oh. Now I kind of want to get bonked by Rose, huh? know what it would be like. You can have mine. I get too many. Oh my god, Sable, yeah, get some food, please. I mean, Crystal, I also wouldn't mind a bunk from you. Both of you can do it, I'm sure. I don't want to cook though. I still have some leftover dinner. Alright. I would make foods. Oh. Dinner party at Crystal? Best at baking though, I'll take that. I love me some nice baked goods. Amazing cupcakes. I still want to try your cupcakes. I'm sure they are. Cinnamon rolls. Ooh. Ooh, look at that. Okay. We gotta start with the book today though, because otherwise, God, we're gonna be here for a while. Since 50 pages today. We got a chunky boy today, huh? We got a lot to go through. Are you guys ready? Hope you're all ready for it now. Chapter 9. It's called The Threads That Bind. We're back. Okay, Rose. Starting in White London in present time, okay? A knock sounded on the bedroom door. Holland's hand dropped from Korsica's shoulder. He drifted past her to the window as she said, "Come in." She expected a servant or perhaps Nazi, but instead it was Lark who entered, holding a tray. "My queen," he said. There was a quirk to his mouth when he said it, not mocking, but playful. A reminder that he had known her back when she was a street rat, and he a scrawny thief. Before she'd gained a black eye and a crown, before he'd gained that scar at his throat, before his shoulders had grown wide and his bearing tall and voice had taken on that rich honey lilt. His eyes scanned the room, passed right through Holland before lingering on the blood-soaked cloak she'd thrown off on her way in. "Good thing you're not squeamish." Korsica shrugged. "Never have been." She didn't realize how hungry she was until he set the tray down and she saw the food piled high on the plates. Thick sliced meat and roast carrots, a loaf of bread and a bowl of stone fruit and a pitcher of cider, easily enough for two. In the beginning, she had been unnerved whenever anyone else stood in the presence of her saint, unnerved by their inability to see him as she could. But now, it gave her a kind of thrill. "Do you wish they could see me?" asked Holland, and Korsica surprised herself by thinking no. She would want it, she knew, but she liked that that he had chosen her, only her. Holland's mouth twitched, a ghost of a smile. And she forced her attention back to her friend. "Eat with me." "A soldier taking from the queen's plate?" he said, aghast. But she rolled her eyes and split the food between them. She sank into a chair, and he perched on a footstool. "You're missing quite a feast," he said. "And now you're missing it too. A servant could have brought that tray." "I'm glad for the excuse," he said, meeting her gaze. "I hardly see you anymore." "You see me every day." "I see the queen." "Are we not the same?" she wanted to ask, but she knew they weren't. She would never be a proper queen. A proper queen would be downstairs, smiling and nodding at nobles, but she could not be the reckless, feral girl she had once been. She looked to the bloody cape. "I wish she wore a cloak or crown," she mused. "Something like I could shed." "I don't," said Lark. "You are changing the world, Korsica." The words surprised her, so did the light in his eyes. "He's loyal to you," mused Holland. She had almost forgotten he was there until he spoke. She half expected Lark to flinch, to jerk at the sound of the voice, but of course he didn't hear it. Didn't see Holland drift forward, fingers gliding along the trunk of the silver tree. It took all her effort not to shift her attention. Let her gaze follow him across the room, so she was grateful when he passed behind Lark and stopped there. She was looking at both. "Tell me about it, this feast I'm missing." "Well," said Lark, swiping a plum from the tray, "half the nobles are drunk, and the other half are fools. Two of the are having an affair and terrible at hiding it, and Nazif flirting with this soldier, Gale. Do you know him? Handsome enough, but hollow skulled." "Jealous?" "Well, he said, rolling the plum between his hands. I've heard Gale's a talented lover. Kosika snorted into her cider. Lark rambled on, and as he did, she imagined the castle falling away. Imagined them sitting on the edge of the city wall, legs swinging over the side as they shared a stolen meal. And then she yawned, and the room snapped back into shape. And Lark rose. And so, he should be going. And said he should be going. My queen, he said with a bow. She rose, following him toward the door. He pulled it open, the sounds of celebration wafting up from below, but he stopped on the threshold. Almost forgot, he said, digging into his pocket. He turned and held out a small black pouch. Happy birthday. She blushed as she took the pouch, turning the contents out into her palm. Dusty white blocks rattled in her hand. Sugar cubes. Stole them from the kitchen. The castle kitchen, she pointed out, which belongs to me, could have simply asked for them. Well, yes, a little girl told me that stolen things taste twice as sweet. I'm not a little girl anymore, she said, and Lark laughed as if it were a joke. And then he left after that. The door swung shut behind him, silencing the sounds of the party below, and she was alone again with her king. Kosika looked down at the sugar cubes in her palm, felt Holland's shadow fall over her. Do you remember? She said. Holland's brow furrowed. Remember what? The day I found you lying in the silver wood, I put a sugar cube in your hand. He shook his head. You found my body, but I was no longer there. Kosika frowned. If you weren't there, how did you choose me? His green eye briefly darkened. Silence stretched between them, growing heavier with each passing second until Holland reached out and brought his hand to rest on her head. What matters is that I did. She nodded beneath the weight of his palm and told herself he was right. Of course he was right. Who was she to question the summer saint? But that night, when he was gone, Kosika lay awake in bed and turned the sugar cube between her fingers, trying to decipher the shape of the shadow that had crossed his face. Until the image bled and she forced the thought from her mind and gave in, at last, to sleep. Now we're jumping 1 year in the past. Kosika needed a bath, needed to scrub every trace of that other world from her skin. She wanted to be alone, but word had a way of traveling through the castle. More than once, Kosika had wondered if it was magic, some spell that allowed gossip to go through walls to move faster than feet. By the time she reached her chambers, Nazi was there with a pair of servants perching on the edge of the stone tub in the corner of the room, which brimmed with hot water. The servants came forward to undress their queen the way they had 1,000 times, but as their fingers reached for the laces at her waist and throat, Kosika recoiled. Don't touch me, she said, her voice too loud, too sharp. The servants flinched, but Nazi scowled. What's gotten into you? Kosika only shook her head, undoing the laces herself, and Nazi must have motioned for the servants to leave because a moment later, the door sighed close and they were alone. Where did you go? Kosika said nothing as she wrestled with her clothes. Cinders had settled on the shoulders of her white tunic and the tops of her shoes, staining them gray. She felt contaminated. At last she was free and climbed into the scalding bathtub, hissing at the heat, plunging even her wounded hand into the bath. In seconds, the water was no longer clear, but cloudy, stained pink and gray. Nazi watched as Corsica pulled the pins from her hair and flung them aside. Watched as she took up soap and scrubbed her skin raw. Watched and waited for Corsica to explain, and when she didn't, Nazi took up a bar of the sweet-smelling soap and began to wash her hair. As long as Corsica could remember, she had loved the feeling. In the months after becoming queen, when the castle was too big and too quiet and she couldn't sleep, she would lie with her back to Nazi, and the girl would run her fingers through her roots. She remembered her mother doing it when she was very, very young, but it was such a gentle memory, it must have been a dream. Now she leaned back and fell beneath the spell of Nazi's hand, and when the girl said, "Tell me," Corsica did. She told her of Holland's room behind the altar, of the box and the tokens in it, of the words that came to her and the world where they led. She expected Nazi to recoil at the mention of Black London, but she didn't. Her hands never stopped moving. "What was it like?" she asked quietly. Corsica stared at the bones of her ceiling and said the only word that came to mind. "Dead." She rolled her head, looking to the soiled clothes that lay piled on the floor. "Burned them to be safe." Nazi's hands disappeared from her hair and she knelt to collect the clothes. She stood, holding them out like an offering. Her eyes narrowed to focus, and her lips moved. And a moment later, the fabric in her hands began to burn. Oh, fire swallowed the beautiful stitching, the silk and leather and laces, filling the room with an acrid smell and a plume of smoke. But not all of it burned. As the bundle in her hands collapsed, 4 shards of blackened glass slipped out, ringing faintly as they hit the stone floor. Nazi knelt to pick them up, fingers hovering over the tokens. "Don't," said Corsica, but for once, Nazi didn't listen. She took the largest shard gingerly between her fingers and held it up, peering through the darkened glass at Corsica. And for a moment, only for a moment, the eerie black shine, the way it filled her eye, made Nazi look like an Antari herself. And then her hand fell, and she piled the 4 pieces in her palm and set them on the low table beside the cold cupboard and slipped away. Corsica stayed in the bath until the water went cold, and then she climbed out, leaving wet footprints on the floor as she fetched the robe and pulled it tight around her. The window was latched, but you could tell that it was night. The air always felt different in the dark. She dressed herself again and took up the shards Nazi had stashed on the table. And then she slipped out, down one tower, up another, back to the alcove at the top of the stairs and the door beyond. She took a burning candle from the altar and slipped behind the statue. She could not linger in the old king's room, would go straight to the desk, return the pieces of the token to the box. But when the door opened beneath her touch, Corsica gasped. The room was neither dark nor empty. The candelabra burned, and Holland Bosick sat at his desk, the box open in his hands. Corsica froze, but his head jerked up as if she'd moved, his white hair rising in a crown, and he looked at her with those eyes, one green, one black, and his face, which he had only seen in death or stone, which had always been a mask of quiet pain, was now contorted into rage. His voice a roll of thunder when his mouth opened. "What have you done?" Corsica lurched back, felt herself stumble and fall, and she landed with a splash in the tub, chest heaving, water spilling over the sides of the stone bath with the force of her waking. The water was tepid, not yet cold. She shivered as she climbed out and fetched her robe, each step like an eerie echo on the ones she'd actually made. So by the time she dressed and climbed the stairs to Holland's tower, by the time she ducked past the altar into the chamber beyond, she was sure he would be there, waiting at the desk. But the room was empty, the candles unlit. The wooden box sat open on the table, just as she'd left it. Korsica hurried forward and dumped the broken shards of the third token back inside before closing the lid. But she didn't seal it. She told herself it was because the wounds on her hand had finally stopped weeping. She told herself she simply didn't want to bleed again. She told herself there was no point. When was she the only one who could use the tokens? And when she was the only one who could use the tokens. Whether the things she told herself were true, she left the box unlocked and fled, past the altar and down the stairs up the safety of her own room. Nazi had returned and was laying out the pieces on the cold cottonboard, dinner steaming on a nearby tray. If she noticed that the shards were gone or that Korsica's hair was still wet, she said nothing, only asked if she wanted to play. Korsica tried, but her heart and mind kept skittering away until she flung her pieces down in a fit of pique and went to bed. As she lay there in the dark, she waited, sure that Holland was waiting for her, just beyond the door of sleep. All night she tossed and turned, trapped in her tangled sheets, until Nazi abandoned her bed, muttering about the need for peace. Sometime before dawn, sleep finally came for Korsica, but it was shallow and empty, shadows that refused to coalesce into shapes, and she was about to give up and fling herself out of bed, irritable and achy. When she turned over one last time and sank through the sheets and dreamed. This time, the alcove was dark, the altar candle all snuffed out. Behind the statue, the door stood open, and Korsica's bare feet carried her silently across the stones and into the room beyond, no longer pitch black, but bathed in morning light. She knew he would be there, but something inside her still lurched at the side of the someday king, the summer saint, standing by the desk, one hand resting thoughtfully on the now closed box. This time, as Holland's gaze flicked toward her, Korsica dropped into a bow, one knee touching the cold stone and her eyes on the floor. Okay. Beep. Little car outside. Okay. My king. At first, nothing. Then the slow tread of boots crossing the floor, a shadow falling over her. She did not look up, but she could see the toe of his boot, the edge of his half-cloak skimming the stones as he knelt before her. She felt the weight of his hand as it came to rest beneath her chin and guided her face up to meet his. Korsica caught her breath. She had dreamt of Holland Volsig before, of course, but in those dreams he was either the body in the woods or the altar came to life. A shape more than a man. This Holland was different. This Holland had a flush of color in his cheeks, blood running beneath his skin, a chest that rose and fell with his breath. Up close, his white hair, for years she thought it had always been white, until Serac showed her a portrait, and she learned that in fact it had been black until the day he died. Rose off his cheek, as if caught in a breeze. This Holland's eyes were not made of gemstones or glass. Up close, the green one was not solid emerald but paler green, shot through with filaments of silver. The black was as smooth and dark and lightless as her own. As she studied her king, he studied her. His brow furrowed, but his expression drained of the rage she had imagined. Something cautious in its stead. Interesting, he said, his voice smooth and low. His fingers dropped from her chin and he rose again to his full height. She didn't, not until he held out his hand and beckoned her to her feet. Who are you? He asked, the words curling around her. Korsica, she said. Holland inclined his head. Korsica, he echoed. The name had been nothing in her mouth. Sounds she'd made 1,000 times, but the way he said it, as if it were a spell, made her feel dizzy. She stole another glance at his face and saw something soften. The lines between his brow smooth and the corner of his mouth tense, ever so slightly, as if he were about to smile. I have been waiting for you. He turned, expecting her to follow, but as she took the first step, the room began to thin around them. The edges faded, her vision narrowed. The last thing she saw was the king glancing back over his shoulder before the dream crumbled. She was back in her bed, sunlight spilling in through the open windows and Nazi bouncing on the edge of her cushions. I let you sleep as long as I could. Korsica closed her eyes again, trying to hold on to the dregs of her dream to find her way back. But it was gone. And so was Holland. What a monster you were last night, Nazi was saying. I think it's time you slept alone. She said it gently, clearly expecting some resistance. But Korsica instantly agreed. That was part 1. I got my eye. Itchy eye. Come on. There we go. Part 2. Now we're going to Red London in present time. The first thing Lila noticed was that the world wasn't moving. She had learned to distrust the absence of motion, the lack of bob and sway that accompanied life aboard a ship. Stillness was not only strange but dire. It meant something had gone wrong. Before she could even place the wrongness, she was reaching beneath her pillow for the knife she kept there. But the space was empty and the pillow was silk and the bed beneath her was too soft, and as her mind finally caught up, it supplied a single word. Palace. Lila groaned and rolled over. Pale morning light spilled across the bed and the place where Kel had been lying dead to the world the night before. Only now there was nothing but a tangle of rumpled sheets. Bad enough she'd followed him into the palace. Worse that he left her there. Lila threw off the covers and got up, wishing she'd barred the door the night before. Her jacket lay cast into a chair along with her boots, and the handful of blades she'd bothered to shed before collapsing into bed. But the boots had been cleaned and someone had arranged the knives left to right in descending order of size. She unsheathed one and checked its edge. Of course, it had been sharpened, and even though no one would be foolish enough to she still found herself touching the knives she kept on, even while sleeping. The one strapped to her thigh, her hip, the small on her back, just to be sure they were still there. Lila sighed and crossed the massive chamber. A marble basin sat on a shelf on the far wall, a pitcher beside and a mirror mounted overhead. She poured the water into the bowl, and even though the pitcher had likely been sitting for hours, waiting to be used, the water came out hot. And Lila stared at the steam rising from the basin. 7 years, and the casual magic of this world still took her by surprise. Despite everything she'd forget. And then she'd see a lantern light itself. A man breathe wind into sails. Hot water spill out from a cold pitcher, and her mind would lurch. Like a boot catching a crooked cobblestone. And hell, sometimes when she called on her own magic, she was still shocked that it answered. She leaned forward, crinkled her nose as the scent of blossoms rose from the basin. Fucking royals, she thought, as she splashed the scented water onto her face. The back of her neck ran a damp hand through her blunt-edged hair. A glint of metal caught her eye as she glanced up into the mirror over the bowl. The collar was unlaced, and Kel's ring had slipped out and hung swinging on the end of its leather cord, the ship winking in the light. She took the black band back inside her tunic, but her gaze lingered on her reflection. 2 eyes stared back at her, both of them brown, one real, the other glass. Unlike the eye she traded to Maurice, a relic from her life back in Grey London, this one was a perfect match. As far as Lila could tell, she was the only one unsettled by the sight of it. The eerie sameness, the symmetry forged by magic. A glimpse at how she would have looked if her real eye had not been taken as a child. Back when, as she knew now, Lila had awakened as an Antari. She held her own gaze, inclined her head until the light caught on the surface of the glass, interrupting the illusion. The brown eye had a purpose. It helped Lila to blend in, to move unnoticed. But when she was alone or on the safety of her ship, she never wore it, opting for the black one Maurice had given her, the one she would have had if she'd slept aboard the ship. The one that made her smile whenever she caught her reflection in a puddle or a pane of glass. She was not smiling now. She pushed off the basin, reclaimed her blades and her boots and her coat, and set out to find Kel and a cup of strong black tea. Not necessarily in that order. Word had obviously spread that the Antari were in residence. None of the guards drew their weapons as Lila emerged from the royal suite, made her way down the hall, descended the stairs. Below, the palace was unfurling, like some giant flower, its petals turning to the sun. Servants bustled, opening doors, adjusting rugs, trading out yesterday's bouquets before they even began to droop. Where, she wondered, did the day-old flowers go? Probably into the bathwater. As Lila moved through the palace, servants stopped and bowed, frozen like statues in the middle of their work. 2 brown eyes, or otherwise, they knew what she was. And they looked at her the way they all looked at Kel, their expressions ranging from respect to reverence to fear. But unlike Kel, Delilah Bard welcomed their trepidation. Hi, Oeyes, how are you doing? I hope you're doing well. She was halfway down a branching hall when a servant rounded the corner facing her. There was plenty of room, yet he sidestepped and pressed his back onto the wall as if it were a sin to take up space while she did. Have you seen the prince? She asked. The servant didn't answer, not at first, but as if she were addressing someone else. There was no one else, at least not in earshot, and when he finally seemed to realize that, his gaze twitched up, stopping somewhere near her chin. Lila sighed. If there was a protocol for this, she'd never learned it. Well, she pressed. Maz Arna, he said, bowing deeply again. My lady. Lila grimaced. She hated being called that, as if she were some Astra mingling at court. Call me Captain, she said. The servant hesitated. Apologies, he said, but your rank here outweighs that title. My rank? She ventured, assuming he meant Antari. She was wrong. Your rank, as someone promised to the prince. Lila stared at the servant and felt a sudden urge to break something. The air curdled around her, and he must have sensed it because he shrank back. Tell me, she said slowly, what do you call Kel? Mazvares, said the servant, my prince. And if he were a commoner? The servant ducked his head. As Antari, he would be Mazaven, my blessed. Excellent, said Lila. Then call me that now, she went on, scanning the hall. Where is your blessed prince? The servant pointed her toward the breakfast room, and she set off again. She found the glass-walled chamber overlooking the courtyard, its long table laden with sweet buns and pies and fruit. She was about to go in when she heard a sound across the hall. A small, joyous laugh that could only belong to Ren Maresh. There, at the far end of the sun-drenched gallery, Lila found the child sitting on a step and at her side, light glancing off his copper hair, was Kel. Ren was chattering softly and cupping something small and white in both her hands, and Kel was nodding soberly, his coat cast off beside him on the floor, and his sleeves rolled up his face just enough for her to see his blue eye and the way his lips moved as he spoke. He didn't see Lila, and perhaps that was why she lingered, studying the gentle incline of his head, her fingers drifting almost absently to the ring beneath her shirt, until she heard the sound of footsteps drifting toward her. Not the hushed and hurried steps of a servant, or the tread of a soldier, but the slow, even glide of a body at home. Fuck, thought Lila as her head dropped to her side. Your Majesty, she said aloud, turning toward the queen. Lila knew she should bow, but she couldn't bring herself to do it. Instead, she offered the barest incline of her head, more a nod than an attempt at deference. The queen either didn't notice or didn't care. I'm saving some Magic Gathering cards, book and background perfect. Yeah, we were yapping for like a little bit, but we also have a 50-page chapter today, and I gotta get through this. Plus, we're gonna be doing a lot of gaming after this. I woke up like an hour and a half before stream, so we'll be doing some Honkai, we're gonna be doing some Genshin, all that good stuff, you know? Please, she said, call me Nadia. We're family after all. Family. The word scratched at Lila's skin like rough wool. As far as she was concerned, family had nothing to do with proximity or blood. Family was a chosen thing, a label earned. Baron had been family, Kel was family, Alucard and Strauss and Basri and Tav and Rai. But Nadia had yet to gain purchase. Lila doubted she ever could. She raked her gaze over the queen. Facing each other, they looked like two sides of a warped mirror. They were the same age and nearly the same height, and ever since Nadia had hacked away the heavy mane she thought she brought to court, their hair fell in the same way, skimming their shoulders. Their coloring was where they differed. The queen's skin was olive, where Lila's was pale. Her hair jet black, where Lila's was dark brown. Her eyes the same shade where Lila's were not, and her body curved in ways Lila's never had. filling her dress while Lila's shirt ran uninterrupted from her shoulders to her waist. But it wasn't the ways they were different that bothered her. It was the way they were alike. It was the way Nadia looked at her as if she were a prize. It was a look Lila herself had leveled at plenty of things she had stolen or killed for. Now the queen's hungry eyes slid past her to the gallery and Ren, who was now holding the little white shape aloft so Lila could see what it was. An egg. She took it from the kitchen months ago, mused Nadia. Rescued from a skillet. She's convinced if she's kind enough, the egg will hatch. I cannot seem to convince Ren there's nothing there to rescue. She inclined her head. Children can be marvelous. You could just crack it open, offered Lila. I'm surprised it hasn't spoiled. Oh, it would have, said the queen. But once a week I trade it for a new one while she's sleeping. A smile twitched at the corner of her mouth. What harm is there in hoping? When the hope runs out? She's 4. I'm thinking I can last a little longer. Ren laughed, and the queen and Lila had both turned toward the sound. Kel was now holding the egg to the light and tracing a shape along its shell. He's a good uncle, said the queen. He will be a good father. Lila snorted, and Nadia frowned. Haven't you ever wanted a child? The question had a strange effect, like a corset cinched around her ribs, but the answer was easy and automatic. No. She half expected Nadia to tut, to say that one day she would, but the queen only nodded thoughtfully and said, I always wanted one. I don't know why. It wasn't ego. Some women just want to see their own reflection. I wanted to know what it felt like to make another person. And then when she was there, I wanted to see what she would do, who she would be. Every day she's different. Every day she's new. You talk of her like she's an experiment. I suppose she is, said Nadia, though there was a dreamy quality to her voice when she said it. A grand experiment. She tore her attention away from her daughter. I know you don't like me. Lila cocked a brow. I don't like most people, Your Majesty. You, I don't trust. Why is that? It might have something to do with you expressing a desire to dissect me over dinner. I did say, after you were dead. A servant appeared, a pot of tea and 2 cups balanced on a gilded tray. The queen poured and handed one to Lila, and tempted as she was by the rich, dark liquid that curled to steam, the Lila bot still wasn't about to drink anything offered by the queen. Oh, she took the cup and turned it in her hand as if studying the pattern stamped at the porcelain side. Then, as she held Nadia's eyes, Lila exerted her will, and the steam vanished, giving way to frost that cracked across the surface as the contents froze. The queen's mouth twitched. What a waste, she mused, lifting her own tea to her lips. I'm not your enemy, Lila. Her gaze returned to Ren and Kel. Everything I do for my family, for the future, for our world. If you would only help me. Let me study your magic while... No. I know it's not ideal, but there aren't exactly a wealth of Antari subjects. I'm not about to risk Rai's safety by testing Kel, especially not in his diminished state. Your Majesty, said Lila through gritted teeth, I mean this with the most respect. She turned to face Nadia and said, Go fuck yourself. The queen pursed her lips. You're an extraordinary person, Delilah Bard. I'm surprised you're not more progressive. Your magic holds the key to countless doors, and yet you choose to hoard it. What can I say? I like being the strongest in the room. Nadia shook her head. It's not just about magic, though. Think of the knowledge locked inside your blood. Who knows what it could do? It could heal the kingdom. Her eyes brightened. Perhaps it could even heal Cal. In a step, the cup was gone from Lila's hand, replaced by one of many blades, the edge pressed against the queen's long neck. Do not lie to me, she hissed, and the guards were storming forward, weapons drawn, and Lila didn't want to make a mess. She backed away, sheathed the dagger at her hip. The queen held out her hand to stay them, then touched her fingers to her throat as if expecting blood, as if Lila's hand weren't steadier than that. I don't know how to heal him yet, said the queen, fingers falling. But that doesn't mean I'm lying. Progress takes time and sacrifice. Lila had never liked Nadia, but she hated her then. Hated that there was a chance, even a sliver of a chance, that she was right, which made her hate herself as well. Lila drew her blade again, and the guards twitched in warning, armor scraping as they took a half step forward. But instead of turning the blade on the queen, much as she longed to, Lila dragged the steel across the delicate skin on the inside of her wrist. She tipped the ice out of her teacup and held her bleeding arm over the empty vessel, crimson painting the delicate porcelain. And then, when it was half full, she wrapped a handkerchief around the cut and tied it tight enough to hurt. Happy? She asked. The queen nodded and took up the bloody cup. It's a start. And because Lila had resolved not to make a mess, she walked away, returning her back to the queen, the princess, and Cal, who still sat beside the little girl, his back to them and his head bowed forward on the steps. That was part 2. Part 3. Alucard hadn't always been a morning person. Growing up, he'd savored sleep, but life at sea had taught him to get up with the sun, and ever since trading the night spire for the Sonarast, he'd kept the habit, rising at dawn to train the royal guards. By the time he strolled into the breakfast hall at 9, he was wide awake and sore from sparring. Perhaps Lila was right, and he was out of fighting shape. Or perhaps he was just getting old. 31, it didn't sound like many years, but he swore he felt each and every one of them. He kissed the top of Rye's head before drawing out a chair, murmured thanks to a servant as they poured a stream of hot black tea into his cup. The queen sat across the table, turning through papers, her pen flicking in the margins. She glanced up as he came in, but if she was thinking of his warning in a workshop, it didn't show. Cal was there too, much to Alucard's chagrin, I don't know. The prince didn't sit, but instead stood drinking his tea as if to emphasize the fact that he wasn't staying. Ren, on the other hand, was busy looking at a book of birds and ignoring her toast that Sasha was trying to put in her mouth. The nursemaid shot Alucard a weary look. Just wait, he thought, until she can use magic. Ren was still too young, of course, to have an element, but she moved like his old friend Jinnah, a whirlwind, leaving chaos in her wake. Every day, Alucard expected to see colored threads unfurl around his daughter, to watch her magic bloom, but so far the air around her was filled only with a halo of black curls and the occasional crow feather. "Morning, Luca," she said brightly. Kel and Rye both winced at the volume of the child's voice. Rye had never been a morning person. He rarely found his stride before noon, but today he looked positively miserable, his head in his hands. "Bubbles," he muttered. "The cursed bubbles." "A little too much wine?" asked Alucard, leveling a heavy look at Cal. The prince said nothing, but Rye dragged his head back, the gold of his eyes foggy, tarnished. "Where do we keep this silver stuff?" he asked. "Because it's wonderful in moderation," said Alucard. "And better than a tonic at drawing out the truth," added the queen, turning a page. "Burn it all," hissed the king, indignant. "Tell me why I can heal from a knife to the chest faster than a bottle of spirits." No one had an answer for that. Alucard swept an orange from the center of the table and sat back, noting the empty place at their table "Where's the captain?" "She left," said the queen. At which point Kel sighed and put down his cup. "Better go fetch," muttered Alucard into his tea, and Kel made a rude gesture with his hand as he left. Alucard looked to Nadia. "When did you see her?" The captain and the queen were oil and flame, safe so long as they didn't get close enough to mix. Nadia shrugged. A passing moment in the hall. Her green eyes were half-lidded as her pen flicked across her work. If he didn't know better, he might think she was just waking up instead of winding down, making notes before retiring to her rooms, at last to sleep. "Qu'est-ce là?" asked Rye, cheerfully slipping into the common tongue as she climbed the side of her mother's chair and jabbed a jammy finger at the papers of her plate. "This," said the queen, her voice softening as it only did for Ren. "It's a design for an amplifier." Alucard tensed at the mention of the work, but he could see the page on the table, and it bore no resemblance to the Antari rings or the golden chains. "Amplifier?" asked Ren, sounding out the word. A way to make a person's magic stronger." The tone was gentle, patient, but her speech didn't change. Since the girl had been born, Nadia had spoken to her as if she were a grown adult, bound inconveniently but temporarily in a child's form. If she said a word Ren didn't know, the girl would ask its meaning. Ren squinted at the page. "Why don't I have magic yet?" Rye looked up. It was his greatest fear, he knew, that his daughter would be like him, and he always told Rye the same thing that Nadia now told Ren. "You are young," she said. "It will come." "Daddy's didn't." Alucard stiffened. Only a child could say something like that, stating the obvious without meaning or malice. Rye met his wife's eyes, waiting to see what she would say to that. Nadia only smiled. "Your father is powerful in other ways." Ren took this in, rocking heel to toe on the side of the chair. "If I don't get magic," he said, "can I still have my animals?" A smile caught the edge of Rye's mouth. "Of course you can," said Nadia. Ren nodded thoughtfully and said, "That would be okay." With that, she hopped down, made to flee the table, but Sasha caught the child, guiding her back to the chair. "You don't need magic," said the nursemaid, "but you do need breakfast." An easy quiet fell over the room as they ate. Alucard took it in. When he was young, a set tail was a dangerous thing. His father looming at the head, his brother across, his sister beside, no chair for their mother, no space for sentiment. Those scenes a reminder that looking like a family was more important than being one. That table was full of traps and he could not see, ones just waiting to be triggered. Sit straighter, speak up. Do not use that tone with me. There was no joy in those meals, only expectation, and Alucard could not wait to be excused, the air rushing back into his lungs only when he was free of that room. But as he looked around the table now, his chest grew tight for other reasons. This, he thought, this was a family. An odd one, perhaps, a strange and different shape, and despite Rye's moaning and the Queen's distracting and Ren's restless squirming as if she were a pet trying to escape, while Sasha tried to first to goad and then to bribe her into eating, there was nowhere else Alucard would rather be. Everyone he loved most was seated within reach. He laced his fingers through Rye's and gave a gentle squeeze. And Rye looked down as if Alucard's hand there was a gift. Some unexpected but wholly welcome surprise. He brought it to his mouth and kissed his knuckles. Alucard smiled and sipped his tea, and did his best to savor the moment, knowing it wouldn't last. And it didn't. Ren was the first to break away, having been coaxed to eat an egg and some toast. And half an apple. The child finally escaped and flung herself toward the courtyard doors, Sasha on her heels. Their daughter's presence was a clasp holding them together. Without her, Nadia rose and made her excuses, collecting her papers and a sugared roll as she drifted up to the bed. Their family peeled away like petals until it was just the two of them in the laden table. Even that didn't last long. Before the tea had time to cool, Isra arrived, her short gray hair scraped back and her guard's helm under one arm. Your Majesty, she said, bowing her head, the merchants are here to discuss the import rules for the long dark night. Alucard frowned. Welcome back, Rose. Hope you're doing well. Salvera Noche. You can't intend to go ahead with that. Oh, not you too, said Rye, dragging himself to his feet. Before Alucard could point out what a monumentally stupid idea that was, the king had snatched the sweet bun and followed Isra out. Alucard sighed, alone now, save for the four servants posted like pillars around the edges of the room, waiting to be summoned with a look, or simply an empty cup. You can go, he said, dismissing them all. He told himself it would be nice to have a moment's peace, but in the silence, his thoughts took hold. Alucard sat back, eyeing the mountain of food before him, as his appetite dissolved. His mind tried to latch onto Salvera Noche, but the festival was weeks away, and at the moment, they had a far more pressing problem. His conversation with Lila replayed through his mind, the thread of the hand now amplified by the possession of the Persalis. He bowed his head, resting it on his laced fingers as he tried to think. They could remove the royal family from the palace, but what message would that send? Footsteps shuffled into the room. Sir, said a voice. Alucard glanced up, expecting a servant. Instead, he found a young soldier with hair long enough to be braided and bright brown eyes and a coil of earthy magic in the air around him. He searched his memory for the young man's name. Velastro. The soldier blushed and ducked his head. That's right, sir, he said in Arnesian. Apologies for intruding on your breakfast. Alucard looked around at the empty chairs. You're forgiven. What brings you here? You gave orders to report any activity by the hand. His stomach sank. And 4 more marks were found last night, tacked across the city. The soldier produced a map, the symbols, crimson dots scattered across the south half of the city. Another mark, this one, an X, marked at the map not far from the palace. And this? A dead body was found propped against the wall, a crown drawn and blood over his head. Alucard swallowed. Not exactly subtle. He rolled the map back. Anything else? Velastro hesitated. I'm not sure. He shifted his weight. You asked for news of anything strange. Well, while I was on patrol this morning in the Shah, and it seemed the building collapsed overnight. Alucard waited, unsure where he was going. Well, it's just... Velastro searched for the words. The houses on either side were perfectly intact. Could be a fight gone wrong, said Alucard. A drunk magician out of hand. Right, said the soldier. But the thing is, I've got a knack for earth and stone. And when I was a kid, well, I didn't have the best control. I'm not saying I knocked over any buildings, but... You know what a building looks like when it happens to fall down? Velastro flashed a nervous smile. Right. And the way this building fell, it's not like it fell in, right? Like someone dragged it down on top of them. A spell gone sideways? That's what I thought, he said brightly, adding quickly. Maz Arno. Or a targeted attack? But if that's true, it should be bodies, and they aren't. We've cleared the rubble enough to search, and there's no one inside, and it just doesn't feel right. And I heard you can use things that others can't, and I don't have that gift, but my gut says there's more to it. And I told my squad leader, and she told me it was nothing. And maybe it is nothing. Maybe it's not nothing. But it's not the kind of something you need to hear about either. The longer the soldier talked, the more he stumbled. But it's probably nothing. It probably was nothing, but Alucard didn't have any other leads, so he swallowed the last of his tea and got to his feet. Show me. And that's the end of part 3. Time for part 4. Kel's boots sounded on the sanctuary floor. It was the kind of place where noises echoed, every rustle of fabric and heeled step bouncing off the cool stone walls. Kel changed his stride, tried to walk as Lila had taught him, with the quiet of a thief. The sound vanished as if drawn into the rock, and he smiled, imagining the quirk of her own mouth, her pride parading as amusement. As for where she was at present, he had no idea. He'd gone to the inn first, hoping to find her waiting in their room, hoping, but knowing better. Lila Bard waited for no one. Sure enough, she wasn't there, and he tried not to feel left behind. Knew that she would move through the city in a way he could not, so he had decided to go to the one place he knew she would not. He'd changed his coat, trading royal red for common gray, and put on a cap, smothering the flame of his hair. And if he did not become Kay, well, at least he was not entirely Kel Maresh, as he set out for the sanctuary. The city of London was always changing. Magic made it easy. Buildings rose and fell, as fickle as the seasons, taste, and fashion. Pleasure gardens became theaters, and theaters became arcades, and arcades became plazas, and so on and so on. Only 2 things ever seemed to hold their shape. The first was the royal palace. The second was the sanctuary. Kel had spent his entire youth between these 2 buildings, raised in one, trained in the other. The second, as solid and simple as the first, was ground. In those stone halls, Tieran had taught Kel to control his power, to quiet his mind and focus his magic when it was a torrent, spilling out with every burst of temper. After the battle with Osaron, after the Shadow King was bound, after Kel accepted that his bond to magic was broken, he had gone to see the Avanescent. What am I now? He'd asked, angry and frightened and pain. And Tieran had cupped his cheek and said, "You are alive. Isn't that enough?" Now Kel passed beneath an arch and out into a walled courtyard and felt the air go solid in his chest. The space had the stillness of a grey London cemetery, the paths made of white marble, but in the place of tombstones were several dozen trees spaced as evenly as pillars, each a different size or age or season, each one grown and tended by a priest only using only the balance of their power. It seemed an easy enough feat to grow a tree. It was not. It required a mastery of all the elements. Aside from Antari, priests were the only magicians who could do that. But their talent lay not in the scope of that power, but in its restraint. A priest held no affinity for any one element, but an ability to wield them all in some small measure. They were the living embodiment of their mandate. Pristir ir essen ir priste. Power and balance, balance and power. Such was the nature of magic, they said, that all scales must find their level. They could not move mountains or conjure rain. They could not burn ships to cinders or shatter walls with the force of their wind. Theirs was a gentle magic, the sea that eroded stone. The tree was the embodiment of this restraint. Too much power would kill it as surely as too brittle. Too much power would kill it as surely as too little. And it must live within the bounds of the courtyard without stealing more than a share of soil or water or sun. When a priest died, so did their tree. Not all at once, but slowly, left to wither without their care. And when it was dead, it was dragged out and burned, and its ashes tilled into the dirt for the next priest, the next planting. Tieran's plot should have been empty now, but the tree remained, or what was left of it, a gray husk, leafless and dry, its roots lifting like gnarled fingers, slowly letting go of the ground beneath. I told him to wait, said a voice. I had a feeling you'd want to say goodbye. He turned and saw Ezreal standing in the archway. No, not standing, leaning, arms crossed and hip cocked to one side. Kel did not think he'd ever seen a priest lean before. When they were children, Rai was convinced that he could balance a teacup on Tieran's head all day and it would never spill. Ezreal patted down the steps, and he saw that beneath her white robes she was barefoot. Her black hair hung loose, straight and sharp as glass from the widow's peak to the ends. But it was her eyes he found most striking. Fringed in black lashes, her eyes were brown and yet somehow pale, like paint on a pane of glass, shot through with light. Indeed, they even seemed to glow. When Rai had first met the new Avanescent, he'd said, "What a waste." She was radiant, undeniably beautiful, but Kel's first impression had been only that she wasn't Tieran. He told himself that was the reason he did not like her. Rai said he was being unfair, and perhaps he was, after all. It was hardly Ezreal's fault that Tieran was gone. A man he'd known all his life, replaced by a woman young enough to be the priest's granddaughter. Perhaps Kel resented her far more than taking Tieran's place. Perhaps Kel resented her for more than taking Tieran's place. After all, she had been there for Rai when he himself had not. Rai said he would like Israel if he only spent time with her. His brother knew her better than he did. Perhaps he resented her for that as well. Vanessa, Kel said no, by way of greeting. Master Kel, answered the priest. Or is it Kay? Those eyes glittered with mischief. Kel stiffened. Rai has been telling tales, I see. She gave a careful shrug and a studied smile. That coat of yours has many sides, so I suspect do you. Indeed, said Kel carefully. And what else has my brother told you? She sobered. I am the king's priest and his counsel. His burdens become mine, if and when he shares them. But I do not hand them off to others. It was not, he noted, an answer. She held his gaze as if daring him to ask again. Kel did not like the way she looked at him, eyes flicking between his, from the black to the blue and back again, a constant reminder of their difference. Hi, Angel. Hope you're having a good day. Some priests worshipped the Antari, saw them as an incarnation of magic itself, but others saw them as a warning, a reminder of what happened when power existed in extremes, the opposite of balance. Kel wondered which he was in Azrael's eyes. He didn't ask, instead turned his attention back to the tree and the last traces of Tieran's magic. Thank you for waiting, he said. I know it is just a tree, and yet... Of course it is just a tree, said Ezreal. This is just a building. The isle is just water. He studied her. Spoken like a true priest. What gave me away? She asked wryly, smoothing her white robe. You think me an odd choice for Avanescent? She went on. It wasn't a question, so he wasn't forced to answer. She looked past him to Tieran's tree. Sometimes change is easier to stomach. Have you ever had a beautiful meal? You try to repeat it, you make the dish the same way over and over, and it is never good. Better to try something new. She smiled and shook her head. Apologies, I must be hungry. You did not come to talk of meals or trees. He had not. Indeed, he'd asked the priest at the door to send for Ezreal when he first arrived. The hand, he said. Do we have news? Ezreal's good humor faltered. I told you, Master Kel, the sanctuary is not the crown's crows. The priest's witness, we serve. The priest's witness, we serve. We do not spy. And yet, said Kel, you do not confine yourselves to the sanctuary. You walk among the people. You know the city's power, its pulse. Priests answer to the balance of magic, not to the thrones of kings. You are the Avanescent, he persisted. You serve the king. You are his counsel and his priest. If you know something, anything, if you have any love for Rai. Enough, said Ezreal, with the simple force of fingers snapping. She looked past him, past the trees and the walls of the courtyard. For several moments, she said nothing, and then... They keep their voices low, but we have heard whispers. Her tea-stained eyes flicked back to him. Whispers of a device that can bend space, cut through words. Kel's heart sank. The Persalis. So it was here. What is their plan? He demanded. Do you know? Ezreal only shook her head. but it is a complicated piece of magic. It had to come from somewhere or someone. The voice dipped lower. I have wondered if the queen... No, cut in Kel. Nadia Loreni did not make it. Ezreal frowned. You're sure? It was stolen from a ship and smuggled into the city. One brow lifted. Then you know as much as I do. I know nothing of any use, hissed Kel. Only that it must be found before the Hand use it against the royal family. Have you learned nothing of the Hand itself? Who is behind them? Ezreal's head swept side to side, and Kel felt his chest tighten in exasperation. Someone must know something, he snapped, head spinning. He was no closer to finding the Persalis, to stopping the plot, to uncovering the power behind the Hand. His fingers curled into fists, magic rising with his temper. A wind kicked up, whipping through the courtyard, and on his heels, the wave of pain rolled beneath his skin. He let go quickly, but not quick enough. The air settled, but he was left fighting for breath. Ezreal was staring at him, but her expression held no surprise. It must be frightening, she said, to be at war with your own magic. He stiffened. He had never told her about the rift. My brother should learn to hold his tongue, he said, forcing the air back into his lungs. He straightened, steadied. He needed to find Lailah. If you have nothing else to tell me. But as he moved to pass her, the Evanescent caught his arm. It's not the pain that frightens you. It's what you are and what you're not. A priest removes their robes and they are still a priest. But what is an Antari without their magic? Prince, said Kel curtly, as he moved to pull away, but her fingers were solid, unyielding. The impishness was gone, replaced by an intensity as hard and clear as glass. You must wonder why, she said. Why the power you've had all your life has turned against you now. Is it a spell gone wrong? Or have you broken the laws of magic one too many times? Her words were a sharp knife and a steady hand cutting straight through him. All power has its limits. You are still a servant of magic, and magic demands balance. When that balance is upset, demands a recompense. Perhaps you're being punished. Her hand drifted up, came to rest on his right cheek, just beneath his black eye. Her expression rippled, priestly anger dissolving into something soft, almost sad. Or perhaps, she said, gently, you are punishing yourself. Her hands dropped away from his skin. If you ever wish to tell me why, I will be here after all, she said, that playful light returning to her eyes. I am your Evanescent too. But this time Kel wasn't fooled by the impish grin, the easy air. You never told me how you came to be named Evanescent. Trial by combat, she said blithely. I am stronger than I look. That he did not doubt. Kel started away, stopping only when reaching the archway. He turned back. You're wrong about one thing. Oh? If you shed those robes, you would not be a priest. You'd be a noble. Ezreal Nazaro. If she was surprised that he knew her family name, it didn't show. Neither the name or the situation are mine anymore. I shed my royal claim when I joined the sanctuary. Your family must have felt the loss. Their only daughter. Why did you choose to be a priest? She tipped her head as if considering. Why did you choose to be Antari? The answer, of course, was that he hadn't. It had chosen him. All my life, said Israel, I felt the current of magic in the air beneath my feet. I chose to walk in the stream, Master Cal. But magic led me to it. There's a reason I'm standing there. There's a reason you are too. We are both a part of something larger than ourselves. The words hung like a weight around his shoulders, but the oven essence seemed lighter, buoyed by them. He turned and left her in the courtyard, her white robes floating in the breeze. And that was part 4. Alright, I'm gonna be right back, guys, real quick. I gotta stretch a little bit, maybe get some snacks or something, and then we'll continue. We're like maybe halfway done now or something. I'm not sure, but yeah, I'll be back. I'm back. How you guys doing? Checking a few things here real quick. There we go. All right. Let's continue on with the book. We're at part 5 now. All right. Lila's stomach growled. She left the palace without breakfast, another thing for which she blamed the queen as she cut through the night market. Yippee! Despite its name and the hour, a handful of stalls were beginning to stir and throw off sleep, unfolding tents and assembling their wares, while others were still open for business. A thin crowd trickled between the stalls, preferring the scenic path of the busier streets, oh my god, or drawn by the scent of spice and sugar on the air. She stopped at a baker with a tray of steaming sweet buns, bought a sack of 4, eating as she walked. She ambled past the charm maker, already hawking vials of glowing red drops from the aisle. An obvious forgery, since the water remained neither red nor incandescent ones drawn from the river. And a handful of emerald and yellow and crimson pens, their flaps down, their contents hidden from view. The glint of steel caught her eye as she came to a stop before a stall of blades. They were laid out by length, the shortest meant to disappear into a palm, the longest a sword that looked as though it took 2 hands to lift, let alone wield. Her fingers danced across the weapons, pausing over one of the length of her forearm. It was a work of art, the metal thin as glass. "You can test it if you like," said a lilting voice. Lila looked up at the merchant. She was young, younger than most of the sellers at the market, and the point of her nose and chin reminded Lila of a fox. She did her hair, the brown curls threaded here and there with streaks of red. Okay. 1 second. Lila lifted the weapon. It was beautifully light and perfectly balanced, and she could hear Kel asking how many knives could one person possibly need. She searched the metal for sigils, signs of spell work, the last time she'd used a strange blade that had murdered a man with his own magic. "Any tricks?" The merchant shook her head. "In the right hand," she said, "a good blade needs no tricks." Lila smiled. "Is it wise," she wanted, "to lay out your wares like this?" The merchant looked down at the table as if she'd only just noticed that the weapons weren't sheathed and the hilts, grips all faced out in invitation. The tips pointed into the stalls and to her. I haven't been robbed yet. Then you're very lucky. The girl laughed. I'm many things. Lucky has never been one. She reached out and ran her finger thoughtfully along one of the swords. It takes sweat and blood to make a blade like this. Use the two right, and the steel can't be used against you. So they are spelled. The merchant shrugged. A precaution. A handy one, mused Lila. Don't suppose you could apply the spell to an existing blade? The merchant shook her head. No, she said. But I could make you a new one. I'd need a few days and some of your blood. The girl's eyes had brightened when she said it. Perhaps it was just a promise of a deal or the challenge of the work, but Lila thought she caught a glint of steel in that gaze, just like the one that had drawn her to the stall. Her grip tightened on the knife, the cut along her hand still aching from the sacrifice she'd made to the queen. Blood was a valuable thing. It anchored spells and strengthened curses. It made all magic stronger. According to Nadia Loreni, it held countless secrets. And Lila had made her way through enough black markets in the past few years to know the value of that blood if it came from an Antari. Lila was glad she'd left the black eye back at the shop, back on the ship. She pretended to consider the merchant's offer before returning the knife to the table. On second thought, she said, what fun is there without a little risk? The merchant shrugged but held her gaze. If you change your mind. But Lila was already moving away from the stall and the blades, and the fox-faced girl. She searched the far edge of the market and turned right, away from the river and toward the Shawl and Haskins. Now all she needed was a pretense for visiting the shop. She patted her pockets, felt the familiar weight of her watch. Not her watch. The one Holland had found in her old rooms, along with Barras, the one he'd returned to her stained with blood, the one she'd given to Maurice as payment years before. But a gift from her crew one summer festival, the surface engraved with a C for Casero, Captain. As she drew it out, ran a thumb over the silver shell before she clicked it open, listened to the steady, almost silent tick of seconds passing. And even though the hands inside were driven by a spell instead of cogs, it was easy to forget. Perhaps harder to break, she mused, but she was sure she could do it. Was about to pry away the face she could see it when she saw the time. The minute hand slipping past the hour, both of them a breath of straight. Munis ora, she murmured. 11th hour. Her steps dragged to a stop. She'd assumed the time on the edge of the coin referred to night, but what if she'd been wrong? After all, the surest crimes were those done in daylight right after the mark's nose. Lila turned and headed to the nearest bridge. Intriguing. Part 5 is over. Part 6. We're back in White London. Corsica leaned her elbows on the castle terrace. Below, 100 soldiers were going through their morning practice, the motions of battle broken down and ordered into movements. They reminded her of leaves, the way they bent and moved, the way they rose up and turned together, guided by an invisible wind, their charcoal armor turning them into shadows on the training ground. As she watched, Corsica plucked at a strip of linen wrapped around her forearm, her skin still raw from yesterday's tithe. And perhaps it was just her imagination or the nature of the season. And there were seasons now, 4 of them, instead of the pale breath of change that used to mark the passing of the year. But today, the sky looked bluer, the leaves a more vivid shade of green. The sun was burning off the morning chill, and Corsica savored the warmth of it against her skin as a shout rose up from the training below. The soldiers had finished their movements. and broken off to spar. Those who could conjure paired with those who couldn't, so each could learn how to best the other. Kosika spotted Lark among them. He had grown a foot or more in the last few months, his narrow shoulders banded with new muscle. And while there were other fair-haired soldiers, his curls alone shone silver white in the sun, making him look less like a boy of nearly 18 and more like a struck match. She watched him circle his partner, turning the sword in a lazy arc, fire licking down the blunted, practiced blade. The other man was twice his size, but Lark darted and dodged like flame itself, and in moments, the other soldier was stamping out the lick of fire on his forearm. And as he did, Lark twisted around his sparring partner and came up behind him, resting the blade against his throat. And then he looked up at Kosika and flashed her a wicked, toothy grin, an infectious smile that made her smile too, as if they had a secret, the only secret being that they had lived a life before this one. They were thieves, had stolen their way into this castle. "You've got a crush." Kosika jumped, fingers tensing on the terrace wall. Nazi had come up behind her. "You sure you cannot bend air?" asked the young queen. "I never hear you coming." Nazi shrugged. "It comes in handy, being quiet. The better to watch you swoon." Kosika crinkled her nose, even as she felt her cheeks burn. She was not swooning. She looked down, but he was gone again, a blur of motion. "Don't be silly," she said, turning her back to the soldiers. Lark is like a brother." Nazi's mouth twitched into a smile. "Just as I am like a sister?" "Exactly." The other girl drew closer then, until their fronts were pressed together. She ran teasing fingers down Kosika's ribs, her waist, still flat and narrow as a child's. "One day you will want more than the company of siblings." Kosika hissed between her teeth and swatted Nazi's hand away. "I just don't want you to be alone," said Nazi, and Kosika wished that she could tell her friend she wasn't. She was never alone anymore. Holland stood beside her as he had all morning, as he had every day for nearly a year, her constant shadow, her blessed saint, the hand that guided everything. Now we're jumping 1 year back again. After Holland appeared to her in that first dream, she lived for sleep. Kosika sat through the council meetings and entertained the parade of citizens who came to her for favors, and walked the castle grounds and dined with the Ver and waited for night, when she could fall into bed and go in search of Holland. Sometimes she found him in his room. Other times she found him sitting on the throne or in the courtyard or on the steps. Some nights they walked the castle side by side, and some they stood before his own altar, and he told her the stories of his life as Serac had so many times. Only he also told her things that Serac hadn't, details of his life before he became the serf of Vortalis. And if it was strange that a dream could know things that she did not, well then, Kosika assumed it was her own imagination. But every night she dreamt of him. Holland seemed to grow more real. Until one night, as they stood before his altar, she found herself saying, "I wish you were here." Holland had been studying the statue. Now he looked down at her perplexed. "I am." "This is only a dream," said Kosika. He surveyed the alcove where they stood. "It may be a dream for you," he said. "It is something else for me. A shadow world, a waiting place. I was here long before you found me." The words rattled through her, shook loose a vicious hope that he was not merely a figment after all, that he and this were somehow real, that Kosika was in the presence of not a conjuring, but the someday king, and a possible hope. And yet, what was impossible in a world where magic rekindled and power passed like a sugar cube between hands? And her eye turned black, and she was the queen. "What are you then?" she asked. The question elicited the faintest twitch at the edge of his mouth. And all of the works of art and all the statues and sketches and reliefs, Holland Vosik never smiled. His brows drew together, his mouth always a firm line, his jaw clenched as if biting back words or pain. Even this could barely be called a smile. It was only the barest curve at the corner of his lips. She felt bathed in light. "Do you believe in ghosts?" he asked, and Kosika shook her head. She never had. Even when Lark tried to scare her with tales when they were young, she knew magic came and went, and so did people. Here was here, gone was gone. But what, then, did that make Holland Vosik? He seemed to consider the question, though she didn't ask aloud. "I know what I was," he said, "but not what I am. I bound myself to the magic of this world, and so it seems I am still here." He studied his hands. "In a way, I have been here in this place between. And then you found me. The question is," his gaze flicked back to her, "how did you find me now?" Kosika said nothing, even as his eyes weighed down on her. "Your power was mine once," he ventured. "Perhaps it grows, or perhaps you have done something." She flinched and knew he saw the truth in her face or her mind. Of the day she had used his token to travel, the day her dreams of him had started, and it was as if he himself had forgotten and now remembered. Suddenly, the open box, the missing piece. "What have you done?" His anger rekindled then, and all the altar candles with it. "You should not have gone there, Kosika." She stood a step back, but he caught her by the shoulders. "Tell me you took nothing out." His fingers tightened until it hurt. The pain felt real. "Tell me." She shook her head. Nothing, I swear." Holland let go as quickly as he'd grabbed her, the sudden absence of weight leaving her off balance. He turned away from her and the circle of altar lights and leaned against the alcove wall, shadows washing over his weary face. "There was nothing to take," Kosika went on. "No signs of magic. Everything I saw was dead." But as she said the word, she thought of Serak's lantern, the wick hissing with smoke as the fire went out. Magic does not die. Fear sparked inside her then. Fear that she had carried some piece of cursed magic from that place, like mud on the bottoms of her shoes. But Holland shook his head. "You would know." His mouth was a small, bitter line. "The magic in that place is not subtle. It has a mind and a will of its own." He studied the altar. "Trust me," he muttered, and her mind went to the writings in his room. "The 10 days, she said. "The 10 days you vanished from the world. This is where you went." Holland did not look at her. "I would have done anything to see our world restored, and so I did. The worthy ruler is the one who understands the price. Black London is the source of all magic," he said. "It is a wellspring, but every drop comes at a cost." He told her then what happened in the 10 days after the Danes fell and before he took the throne. How he'd been mortally wounded, forced into Black London. How he'd lain there, lifeblood leaching into the ruined soil. How he could have died if he had not met Osaron. Sauron, the Shadow King, the center of the flame that burned the world to ash, now reduced to an ember in an empty world. How he carried that ember out in his own form to rekindle the magic of the world. What have I done? Only what I must. Carry the spark out of the darkness into the light to light my candle. Sheltered it with my body, knowing I would burn. In the end, he said, it cost me everything. He looked to the window and open onto the summer night, but it worked. And a Sauron? She asked, hating the way the word snaked across her tongue. Holland clenched his teeth. Sauron wanted what all flames want, to spread, unchecked, to burn. He met her gaze, but that fire at least has been put out, extinguished with my own. And yet, thought Kosika, you are still here. But she said nothing. One night, Holland told her of the other Londons, not of the fallen world, he did not speak of it, but of the other two, whose tokens she'd seen in the box. The first and farthest where magic was forgotten, the other, closer, where it burned so much brighter than their own. That world which the Danes had coveted, and so many kings and queens before them, as if its magic was a prize that could be taken back. He told her of Kel Maresh, the Antari, who called that world home. Told her of the Lila Bard, the Antari from the world beyond who thrived despite its absent magic. He explained how to travel between the four worlds, spoke of them as they were doors not lining the same hall, but set one before another. So that to reach the farthest, she would have to pass through the one that sat between. He taught her these things, as if she had any desire to set foot beyond the boundaries of her own world. But she did not. I don't see the point, she told him. Why would I care about the other worlds? And for the first time, she saw a shadow of displeasure cross Holland's face. She flinched from it, afraid that he had angered him. Then the shadow passed, and he only sighed and said, perhaps you will not have to. But he told her no more stories that night, and the next, he wasn't there. Kosika dreamed of the castle as usual, searched the halls, the throne room, and the tower altar, even traipsed barefoot across the courtyard, but she couldn't find Holland. Panic bloomed behind her ribs as she called out for her saint, her king, voice echoing through the empty halls, and she began to fear that he was gone for good, that whatever he had possessed this week had been nothing but a strange and fleeting vision. The waiting place, he'd called this space, and it felt empty now, hollow in a way it had never been. And as she searched, the panic grew and grew, and by the time she woke, it had wound itself around her ribs, made it hard to breathe. He was gone, she thought. Gone. Grief wrapped itself around her as she sat up, flinging off the sheets, and there he was. Holland stood at the window of her chamber. It was the first time she had dreamed of him in daylight, and he looked different. The sun caught the white of his hair and the silver of his cloak and pin, light tracing his edges as if it poured through his body as if it were a curtain. There you are, she said, relief overcoming the strange sensation of waking from one dream into another. I've been looking everywhere. Holland glanced over his shoulder. I am right here. He turned his attention back to the window. Come and see. She rose, surprised by how cold the stone floor felt on her bare feet, her senses keen even though she was still dreaming. She joined Holland at the window, felt the almost weight of his hand as it came to rest on her shoulder, the other gesturing out and down to the courtyard below. The leaves were changing on the trees, the red and gold so bright it looked like they were burning. A moment later, the door flew open behind them and Kosika turned, Holland's touch falling well away as Nazi barreled in. There was a sweet bun in her mouth, another on a plate. "Oh good, you're up," she said. Korsica realized with some surprise that she was indeed awake. Nazif flopped down on the nearest chair. "What are you doing at the window?" She looked back, sure that she would find the room behind her empty, but Holland was still there, one hand resting on the sill. Not a dream. "I have never been a dream," he said evenly, and Korsica expected Nazif to startle at the sound of his voice, but the other girl didn't seem to notice, sprawling across the sheets in the presence of the Summer Saint. "She cannot see me." His voice rang so clearly, not in Korsica's mind, but through the room itself, as if he were standing there, as if... "Again, you doubt me," said Holland, his voice taking on a darker note. Korsica pressed her palms against her eyes. It was one thing to see someone in your dreams, in the in-between, the shadow realm of sleep, and quite another to see them standing in the living world, especially when no one else could. She was afraid then of what he was, and wasn't. Afraid that he wasn't blessed, but mad. "What's wrong?" asked Nazif. A moment later, Korsica felt cool fingers brush her forehead, and looked up into her friend's scarred face. She wanted to tell her, but what would she say? That she was seeing phantoms, that her dreams were following her out of sleep. Holland stepped behind Nazif, his eyes dark, impatient. "Is your faith in me so fragile that it bows and breaks under the slightest breeze?" "No," said Korsica quickly, only to realize she'd spoken aloud. Nazif was staring at her confused. "I don't feel well," she said. "Could you fetch some tea?" Nazif searched her face another moment, then kissed her temple and said, "Of course." The moment she was gone, Korsica turned to face the king. "Why can't she see you?" "Because I did not choose Nazif," he said. "I chose you." Those words, like a hand smoothing rumpled sheets, followed too quickly by the disappointment on his face. "Tell me, Korsica, did I choose wrong?" "No," she said, her voice tinged with desperation. She wanted him to be real. She wanted to believe. And as if she knew her mind, as if he knew her mind, Holland stepped closer. "Hold out your hand," he said, and she did, cupping them before her. To her surprise, he held out his own and brought them to rest around hers. And she could almost feel them, like a breeze brushing her knuckles, grazing her skin. "I chose you, the silver wood," he said, and as he spoke, she felt a sudden flush of heat, a warmth that kindled at her very core, spreading throughout her chest and down her arms to the place where Holland's fingers swallowed hers. "I chose you," he said, "to be my hands." Something began to happen in the room around them. Crumbs of dirt rose from the floor, where they had lodged itself between stones, and beads of moisture squeezed themselves out of the air, and warmth dragged itself from the sunlight in the window, and all those fragments gathered in the space between her palms and began to grow. Out of everything and out of nothing. A seed, a sprout, a sapling that threw roots down between her fingers and his fingers, and reached its narrow limbs to the ceiling and sky as it grew in the space between their bodies. It was a silver tree, its bark tender and pale. Holland's palms fell from hers, but the sapling remained, heavy in her outstretched hands. Korsica marveled at it, felt her eyes prick with tears. She knelt and set the sapling on the floor. Holland's voice spilled over her. "We are bound together," he said. "Your magic was once mine, My legacy is yours. I will guide your hand if you let me. Her head rose, and this time there was no hesitation, no doubt. I am your servant, and I will be your saint, he answered. Green eye bright and black eye infinite, and together we will do wondrous things. And that's the end of part 6. Yo, this is getting quite interesting, is it not? Alright, pop quiz, what's going on? Who was the main villain? In this book, it seems to be the Hand. In the previous series, in the third book, it was a Sauron. Seems to know your books. I mean, I've read them all. Of course I would. All right. Part 7. We're back in Red London now. Rock shifted beneath Alucard's boots. Careful, sir, said Velastro. It's not exactly stable. The soldiers had carved a makeshift path through the building's wreckage, heaping the splintered wood and broken stone into piles and shifting the bulk of the debris out of the edges, where the walls had been before they fell. 2 soldiers had cordoned off the ruins and was still searching the debris, while a third was making the rounds for information, which was a harder task. This was the Shawl, after all, a place known both for its dislike of the crown and its desire to keep its business to itself. But good coins spent in every quarter, and Alucard had supplied a bag of it in the hopes that bribery would do what civic duty wouldn't. Anesh, asked Velastro, trailing in his wake. What do you think? You are right to come to me, said Alucard. Whether or not this had been the work of a hand, there was nothing normal about this building's fall. The damage had been total, the tearing down so complete it couldn't have been accidental. There were no lingering roof beams, no fragments of wall left standing. This had been a demolition, the work of someone burying their tracks. Velastro beamed at the praise, and Alucard resisted the urge to pat the eager young soldier on the head. Instead, he turned and squinted the debris of a tangle of threads in his side. His eyes were accustomed to seeing too much, but usually there was an order to it. As he stepped over a broken beam around the warped remains of the shelves, it all blurred together so much he almost missed it. It, whatever it was lodged in one of the head-high piles, only a thin piece poking out the top. At first, he thought it was a sliver of metal catching the sun, and as he stepped closer, he realized there was no object. Only a line of light burned into the air itself. Stand back, he ordered. As soon as the soldiers were clear, Alucard swept his hand, felt a familiar rush of magic rising into his fingers as they dragged through the air. and a pile of earth and rock answered, emitting a dull scrape as if it was pushed sideways, revealing bare floor and a shape carved into the air, a set of perfect lines squared off into a frame. Oh, right, he can see the remains of the door. The first time she traveled, Alucard swore under his breath. No, not a random act at all. What is that? Asked Velastro. Alucard tore his gaze from the mark. You can see it too? He asked, surprised. Velastro's head wobbled a little, as if he couldn't decide between a yes or no. I can see it, and I can't. And then he used a word Alucard hadn't heard in years, not since his time at sea. Trosa. Ghost. Sailors had all kinds of stories of the Saros who stole over ships like fog, and the Garost who reached up from the deep and scraped its nails along the hull, and the Trosa, spectral vessels that followed in the ship's wake, lurking at dawn and dusk on the horizon, but never drawing closer. But Velastro wasn't a sailor, and to him, the word meant something else. That's what we used to call them, he explained. When we were kids, the echoes you see when you stare too long at a bright light and then close your eyes and it's still there, no matter how many times you blink. Alucard reached out, fingers grazing the air over the mark. He half expected to feel some resistance when he touched it, but whatever magic had been in play, it was spent, leaving only the scar, its vivid lines carved into the air, the edges burned white. A remnant, he murmured. Just then another soldier rode up on a royal mount. Alucard's fingers fell away from the mark as she dismounted, tucking her helmet beneath her arm. Well, he said, what have you managed to buy with our coin? More than you'd think, said the soldier, and less than you'd like. She surveyed the wreckage, contained as it was the only one house. And explained that before this place fell down, it had been a repair shop run by a man named Haskin. Any sign of him? That's the thing, said the soldier. When I asked for a description, no one could oblige. According to everyone I met, he never left the shop, never handled customers. He was by all accounts a recluse. But there was no body found in the wreckage, observed Alucard. Maybe he doesn't even exist, said Velastro. Alucard looked at the young soldier. Perhaps he was sharper than he looked. You think it was a front? It was the older soldier who answered. Oh no, she said, shaking her head. As far as I can tell, Haskin's shop did plenty of repairs. Not sure how much was legal, but all business was handled by his apprentice. A girl, 15 years, give or take, lanky, lots of hair. One described her as a feral cat. Name? The soldier shook her head. Alucard sighed. Of course not. That would have been too helpful. He kept listening, but his gaze drifted over to the wreckage toward the front of the shop. What was left of it? Which was when he noticed the young man lingering across the street. If he was trying to hide, he was doing a pretty bad job. He stood on the curb, a paper bundle clutched in both hands, and stared straight at the ruined shop, his face slack-jawed as he took in the damage. The first thing Alucard thought was that he must have been either a customer or a friend. The second thing he thought was that they'd met before. It was in the shape of his face, the way his black hair carved a widow's peak into his brow, the way his eyes widened when he noticed Alucard staring back at him. The man froze. Froze the way Ren's rabbit Miros did sometimes when it was being chased by servants, as if it thought it might be able to blend right into the chair leg, or the carpet, or the tapestry against the wall. And then, once it realized it couldn't, it did whatever rabbits do. It ran. Wait, started Alucard, but the man was already turning on his heel, sprinting away down the street. Sect, he swore, grabbing the reins of the soldier's mount and swinging himself up. He dug in his heels, and the horse surged into motion, leaping a low pile of debris as its hooves pounded down the street. The young man was quick, but he was also clumsy, long limbs tangling as he ran. He half skidded, half slid around a tight corner, dropped a bundle as he did, spilling what looked like dumplings across the paving stones as he scrambled back to his feet, started to run, then changed his mind and turned to face his pursuer. The horse reared to a stop and Alucard dismounted, holding up a hand in peace. "I just want to talk," he said, which was true. He knew not everyone ran because they'd done something wrong, and even if he had, Alucard only cared about the young man's crimes if they would shed light on the ruined shop and its missing apprentice. "What happened to Haskell's shop?" "I don't know," said the man, breathless. "Just going to visit Tess to pay her back, for the dumplings." "And is she alright? Was she inside?" "Tess, that's the apprentice at Haskell's shop." His head bobbed. He looked around again, as if the alley walls might be narrowing. "What's your name?" asked Alucard. Thought it was innocuous enough. The man's eyes, a pale brown like weak tea, narrowed. His face snapped shut, and Alucard realized why he'd stopped running. Before, he'd been too busy to notice the color of the young man's magic, but now Alucard saw the threads bruising the air around his opponent's shoulder. It was a color he almost never saw, a dark and warning violet. "It doesn't matter," said Alucard, waving his own question away. "Right now, we need to find your friend. Tess, make sure she's safe." He regretted the words as soon as they were out. He just tipped his hand, admitted she wasn't in the shop. The man's brown eyes flicked up, and Alucard pressed on. "If you come back with me, maybe you'll see something." "Tess can look after herself." He took a step back as he said it, shaking his head. "I can't let you go," warned Alucard. The man flashed him a pitying grin. "I don't think you have a choice." They moved at the same time, each reaching for their magic. Alucard for the street stones and the younger man for him. Alucard was fast, but for once, not fast enough. The ground beneath them shuddered, but before it could rise up, the other man slammed his hand down and Alucard felt his body buckle and fold. Bone magic. That was the power turning the air around him such a vivid shade. Alucard's limbs were forced to the ground, his head bowed so he couldn't see anything but the street. His hands splayed on the stones. He gasped, trying to wrest his body back from the man's hold, felt his jaw grind shut so he couldn't call for help. "I'm sorry," said the man, and if Alucard weren't being held against his will, he might have stopped to think how strange it was, that apology. Stranger still that it sounded sincere. He heard the man's boots skirt around him, careful to stay beyond Alucard's line of sight. "I'm sorry," he said again. "I just wanted to bring her dumplings." His steps retreated down the alley, and the last thing Alucard heard was him pausing by the horse to pat its flank and say, "Good boy," before slipping away. As soon as he was gone, Alucard's body was his again, not gradually, like feeling coming back into numb fingers, but all at once, control slamming back into his limbs with all the force of a wave on the rocks. Alucard rose to his feet, shaking out the unsettling sensation of having been a puppet of someone else's strings. The horse stood waiting patiently at the mouth of the alley. "You could have stopped him," he muttered, mounting the beast. But neither he nor the horse were going after the bone magician. Not while the ghosted mark still burned behind his eyes. hanging there as it had in the ruined shop, a scar the size and shape of exactly one thing: a door. Part 8. The house sat still and dark, exactly as it had the night before. Lila leaned at the mouth of the alley across the street and searched the edge of the coin again for some clue she might have missed, some hint or mention of a day to go with the blasted hour. But the words hadn't changed. Son helarin ras, nonis ora. The street of the house had come alive. Carriages went up and down the road, and customers spilled in and out of the shops. And the houses to either side showed signs of life. The 11th hour came and went, and no one approached the doors of 6 Halaran Way. This was beginning to feel like a riddle, and as far as Lila was concerned, riddles could go hang themselves. She was about to go, and then stopped. If she was going to be standing vigil twice a day, at least she could save herself the walk. She unwound the bandage from her hand, the cut still fresh. A little pressure, and it welled. She touched her fingers to the blood and made a small mark on the nearest wall, a vertical line and 2 small crosses. A shortcut. She wrapped her hand and scowled at the empty house one last time. 6 Halaran Way stared grimly back, its windows dark, its gate locked tight as teeth, its facade taking on a rictus grin. The longer she looked at it, the more she felt like it was mocking her. Fire sparked in her palm. She briefly considered burning it down. The urge passed until she felt the body in the shadows at her back. Lila sighed and drew a blade. I warned you what would happen, she said, if you followed me again. She was about to throw a knife when a familiar voice replied, well, that sounds menacing. Lila decided to throw it anyway. To Alucard's credit, he sidestepped the blade and caught the metal edge between his fingers. I'm going to pretend, he said, that you didn't know it was me, or were merely acting on instinct. You do that, said Lila, flicking her wrist. The blade plucked itself from Alucard's hand and returned to hers. He joined her at the mouth of the alley. I admit I was surprised to find you here. She could ask how he did, but she could guess. Those bloody crows. Alucard was studying the houses on the road, and she caught a flicker of discomfort cross his face. The Emery estate wasn't far from here. This had been his neighborhood, the streets where he was raised. A couple passed by, startling a little when they saw the prince's consort. He flashed a smile, but she could see the strain behind it. Served him right, she thought, for following her. He looked past her at the row of houses across the street. So, he said casually, what were you doing here? He resented the use of, what are we doing here? She resented the use of we and considered telling him to fuck off, but she was sick of looking at the stupid house. Perhaps a pair of fresh eyes would help. That one there, she said, jerking her chin at it. I don't suppose it's spelled somehow, something you can see that I cannot. She didn't often envy Alucard's sight. In a world saturated with magic, it seemed to cause him headaches more than help. But she'd been glaring at the stone facade for nearly an hour to no avail, and if it turned out to be the meeting had been happening all along, she really might just burn it down. Alucard looked at the building, his eyes taking on a far-off focus as they scraped across its front. It's no veil, he said. Why? Lila dug the coin from her pocket and tossed it to him. A tip for from a fine company, he asked, weighing the linen in his palm. Believe it or not, Bard, I am not pressed for pocket change. She rolled her eyes. That coin was found on one of the dead thieves in Marissa's shop. Look at the edge. Alucard held it to the light. The metal was still faintly stained from the night before, soot gathering in the tiny grooves. A message, he ventured, squinting as he tried to make it out. I'll save you the trouble, she said. It's very small and backwards. She pulled the handkerchief from her pocket, the words printed in the right direction. He noticed a bandage wrapped around her wrist and frowned. Cut yourself. The price of playing with knives, she said dismissively. Now look. She tapped the writing. It's a meeting, and I'm willing to bet that more than that coin, it's for the hand. Alucard blew out a breath. This must be how we haven't caught on. You must admit, he said. It's rather clever. I'd appreciate it more if they'd bothered to give it their day as well. But they did. He pointed to the little mark that separated the two halves of the message. On the handkerchief, it registered as a small black circle. That, said Lila, is a dot. Only for someone with no imagination or no education in Arnesian shorthand. In which case, that little dot, as you call it, is a moon. Lila's stomach dropped. Or perhaps a moonless, he added. It's hard to know which school they're using. Lila cursed herself. How had she missed it? On a surface that small, no space or symbol would be wasted. She searched her memory. The moon had been waning the last few nights, the sky growing darker. If it was a full moon, that could be weeks away. But if it meant moonless, that could be as early as... In any case, said Alucard, handing back both coin and handkerchief. It isn't happening right now. Good thing, too, he added, turning to go and expecting her to follow. There's something else you need to see. Half an hour later, Lila had traded the broad avenues of the northern bank for the narrow corridors of the Shawl and found herself no longer standing outside a house but in the ruins of one. It seemed to have been torn apart from the inside out. As she trailed Alucard through the remains, Lila noted that the act lacked the air of accident, felt more like a demolition, which didn't explain why she was here. This way, said Alucard, leading her through the wreckage. Lila kicked a broken bit of stone out of her path. Amid the debris, she noticed pieces of metal, too small to be structure, a crumpled T-pin, spilling wire, and twine. The splintered remains of a sign, the words, once broken, soon repaired, still legible. Dread coiled in Lila's gut. This place, she said. What was it called? She knew the answer before he said the name, but it still landed like a dull blow. Haskins. Lila groaned. She had been so close. And what of the man himself? Doesn't exist. Lila cocked a brow. That was a surprise. Shop seems to have been run by an apprentice. Or that's what they called her. A girl goes only by Tez. No sign of her, but just wait. Where is it? Here. Alucard stopped, walking sudden. Alucard had stopped walking suddenly, and Lila grew up short to keep from running into him. He gestured at the space ahead, where the rubble had been cleared, and Lila looked. There was nothing there. Is this something only you can see? She ventured. But Alucard shook his head. I don't think so. Just focus. Or rather, unfocus. Lila didn't understand. She stepped past him, raking her gaze down the air. Still, she didn't see anything unusual. And then Alucard carefully rounded the space and turned to face her. He looked wrong, like he was standing behind a pane of warping glass. What is it? She murmured, half to herself. Oh, what is that? She murmured, half to herself. Alucard's hand flexed. and a breeze kicked up an answer, a current of dust that caught the light, and she drew the shape of the mark. She frowned, following its outline to the ground. I have a theory, Alucard said. I think it's a door, she said. He actually looked a little disappointed, like he wanted to be the one who say it. Well, yes, exactly. Lila stared at the echo of the door. She'd been right. The Persalis had been damaged. The thief must have brought it here to be repaired, and it either had been fixed or someone made a mess while trying. She reached out as if she could lay her hand against the mark, but her fingers met with no resistance. It was only an echo, a scar left by a spell. When did this happen? She asked grimly. Last night, we think, said Alucard, or early this morning. Lila swore under her breath. If only she had come here instead of Hilarion Way. She'd been so close, and now she had nothing. The Persalis was in the wind now, and whatever clues she might have found destroyed, and whatever happened here in the hours before dawn, whatever answers she might have found. Lila straightened suddenly. For a moment, the wreckage disappeared, and she was back on Maurice's shop, the old woman handling her a small glass card. A backward glance, she called it. In case, like me, you find yourself a step behind. Lila's hand went to her pocket before she remembered she'd stashed it in the captain's quarters. She turned on her heel and strolled out of the rubble. Where are you going, Bard? Asked Alucard. To fetch something from my ship. And that is the end of part 8. And with that, chapter 9. Wow. So that means we are done for the day with the book. Chapter 10 is called Out of the Frying Pan into the Fire. And we'll be reading that next week. Man, all right. Yippee! It's all coming together now. Okay, so I guess Lila is gonna use that look back thingy to see what happened, how that rift scar thingy came to be. I mean, we know as the readers what happened because we were there, but obviously Lila and Alucard all don't know. So that's gonna be very interesting. We are getting close, guys. We are getting close. We're at chapter 10. This is all we have left. Like this little bit right here. Remember to bring my frying pan to the stream. Right. So yeah, we're at page 468 and we have about 130 pages left of this book. So like 2 more chapters, 3 more chapters, something like that, and then we're done. 2-3 weeks and this book's done. Which means after that, after we're done with that one, we are going to read a completely new book that, from an author I have not read anything from, but it looked interesting when I saw it in the bookstore. We're going to be reading The Book Eaters. It's a bit of a shorter one compared to the other books we read. It's only like 300 pages compared to like the 600 page books we've been reading. But I'm very interested to see how that book goes. Okay. Well, we are probably going to switch over to Honkai for now. So I gotta do this and that, and then we do this. Eaters that eat books. Yeah, no, it has something to do with that actually, in a way. But I'm very curious how it plays out, because it seems a bit more like a mystery magic world, obviously. So we'll see. Time for some chill gaming night after the book. There. We're gonna do some Honkai first. And after Honkai, we're probably gonna go to Genshin because the new event is out and I haven't done it yet. So that'll be the first thing we do. How's Skirk pulling going? I haven't gotten her yet. I did like 4 pulls, 5 pulls or something. I got pretty unlucky so far. I gotta grind for more pulls in HSR. Same. I'm saving for for Rappa, so oops. Okay.
Nice.
One second. I have 169 in HSR. Nice. I'll do that later, I guess. And there we go. Keep pulling for Skirt and luck so far. We shall see. And easily, I have a 200 pulls saved up. I'm ready for Poo-Poo. Nice. I hope you get her. I mean, with 200, you're guaranteed, so. I have like, how much do I save? Like 12, 11, 12 polls in Honkai here right now. Oh, you guys can't see, but I have like 1900 jades. But like, better win a 50-50 since Miyabi comes next. Hopefully. Like, I'm tempted to do a you know, maybe I can get Iwan Aglaya. But also, like, I'm not going to, because like, I mean, my Aglaya is basically done at this point. What I need to work at is my Herta. And I